Go for it.
Big round of applause for Dan Jelly back there, who's doing it in the camera. And actually, there's been times where you've probably seen about other things, and the council's still being covered. Dan there is the guy who has manned the camera numerous times for me, including once where they announced 2 major meetings at the same time. Dan came through on 30 minutes notice. So, all right, so welcome everyone. We're going to talk about the HSR tonight. Let's talk transit. And the reason why we're talking about the HSR tonight is that tomorrow City Council will debate a significant plan to improve the HSR. It's a 10-year plan. The plan was just released to the public a couple hours ago, so we have not really had a chance to really look at it. We haven't had a chance to ask questions of it. But we're not focused just on the plan. The bigger question is what are we doing with our public transit in Hamilton, and where are we going, and how do we improve it? So joining us tonight is, I think it's a great panel that we've got tonight. We've got Nicholas Delvin from Hamilton Light Rail. Nicholas is leading the movement to get LRT in our city, and has probably read every possible transit planning document there is. You may recognize him from his writing on Race to Hamilton. Nicholas, thank you for joining us. Jason Nason runs the Twitter account at HSR Transit. Okay.
Can we give a big round of applause for that?
Yeah. Jason is on the buses quite a bit, takes the bus every day to and from work. So, guy who knows the system, both on the grassroots and, like so many other Hamiltonians, steps up to fill the void that needs to be filled. Terry Wallace, I love Terry Wallace. The first time I met Terry Wallace, I could tell from the body language of the old HSR director that she was a great person. Because he didn't seem to like her much. And so Terry is a member of the Advisory Committee for Persons with Disabilities. She has been pushing for transit improvements for everyone. Snow clearing, proper bus stop pads, proper service, proper information updates, and she'll probably talk a lot about that, but she's been in front of council more times than I have, and she doesn't get tired of asking for the same thing year after year. So, Terry, thank you for joining us. And I should disclose, she ran for council in Ward 2, and I did vote for her last time, but she's here because she's on ACPD. Sarah Mayo doesn't really need an introduction. Sarah Mayo is in the media more than pretty much any other Hamiltonian. Globe and Mail, come on now. You are the go-to Globe and Mail person on the census. Sarah is a social planner. That's the term. Yeah, social planner. For some reason, I paused when I thought planner because I was like, wait, planner? No, I spend too much time at City Hall. No letters. With the Social Planning Research Council, with a specialty in geographic information systems. Sarah knows the demographics and policy, the demographics of Hamilton better than anyone else, the socioeconomics, how they interact with transit, and has written numerous reports about how transit needs to function in the city of Hamilton for the maximum benefit of all. Thank you for joining us tonight, Sarah. So, we're going to start off with the first question, but I have limited the panelists in this question. They're not to talk about the fare increase proposal. We're going to do that as the next question, completely separate. What would you do? What would you like to see in the 10-year transit plan going forward? How do we improve the HSR? Nicholas.
So I think...
just if you want to pull the microphone closer to you, that way
sure.
keep on the back.
Sure, I think it's good we're going through this exercise, but I think the most important thing is whatever goals and decisions we make, that there's follow-up and that council allocates resources, sets milestones, and checks year by year that they're achieving. The problem is in Hamilton that for at least the past 15 years, we've been very good at adopting transportation plans, rapid transit strategies, operational reviews of the HSR, and then nothing's done. So I think the first thing is that council has to commit to actually making the changes and achieving the goals. In 2001, we said we would double per capita transit use. Transit use has actually declined per capita, and council seems unconcerned by that. So that's my first thing. I think we should increase the funding levels to at least the levels in comparable cities like Winnipeg, Victoria, Quebec City. We should increase service levels, and we should also reconsider the routes. And of course, light rail should be a key part of this proposal, as it was in the Rapid Ready Plan that was adopted by council 2 years ago.
One thing that I think we really need to look at with the transit is to identify where the deficiencies are, which sort of report kind of touch on, and where we need to improve. I'm sure most people have ridden the bus and have encountered pass by as the bus drives past you. It's full, they can't pick you up. If you want to grow the system and grow the revenue, you need to be able to pick up the passengers who want to get on the bus. If people can't get on the bus, you're going to want to stop taking the bus, and then your riders just going to time even more. I think we also need to look at, as far as expansion, to expand the transit so that it's equal throughout the city. There's no really reason why one area of the city should have less transit or less transit options than another area. Stony Creek, for example, if you live in Stony Creek on a Sunday, your buses end at 5 o'clock. There's no transit after 5 o'clock at all in Stony Creek. Some areas have no transit at all on Sundays. We need to look at where we need to expand transit and make it better, and then be able to look at the financial impact of that and actually put the funding in to make it better. If we see deficiencies but aren't willing to fill those gaps and actually go after increasing transit, we're never going to capture more transit usage.
I think one of the most important things is to make sure that transit is user-friendly. Everybody needs to be able to use it, not just a few people, and it has to be there for everyone. The schedules have to make sense. They have to be easy to follow. Everybody should be able to look at a bus schedule, either online or a paper copy, and understand what it means. The routes have to make sense. They've got to be able to go where people need to go. You can't assume that some people only go here and this group of people only goes here. Buses, like right now the way things are, anybody who uses a mobility device cannot go to parts of Vinyl Road. It's absolutely impossible. There's absolutely nowhere for somebody with a mobility device to get on or off the bus on certain parts of Vinyl Road. We have to realize that people with disabilities are people that have strollers. People live all over the city. Everybody needs to get to every part of the city, and everybody has to be able to do that. All the bus stops need to be accessible for everyone. It's no good being able to get on the bus at one place and then not be able to get off where you want to go. You know, being stranded, whether that's caused by lack of sidewalks, whether that's caused by snow removal in the winter when we have snowstorms like this, you have absolutely no idea whether you're going to be able to get on at the stop you want to get on. And if you do, you have absolutely no idea whether the snow is clear where you want to get off. You may have to go several blocks out of your way to find a stop that has been cleared enough for the ramp to be able to be deployed at the back or the front of the bus. I think that we've got to make sure that, well, we're not supposed to talk about fares right now, but the one thing I will say about fares is that they've got to be affordable for everybody. And I know with the voluntary fare the way it is now, that definitely needs to change. It's not fair to give priority to one type of disability over another. But I think that bus systems has to be more efficient. You have to be able to get where you want to go, things like putting a C line on Barton, putting an express bus on Barton. You have to make sure that people can get where they want to go efficiently when they need to. You know, making sure the time is important, making sure that scheduling is important, making sure that the routes make sense, and making sure that all the stops are accessible.
I think they covered pretty much everything that I would have said and more. So maybe the only thing I'll add is in terms of the report, they kind of show, they kind of see transit expanding, staff sees transit expanding in 3 ways. Kind of the first 2 years, this year, next year, it's all about dealing with the deficiencies, dealing with the pass bys, increasing frequency where we need to, increasing social media presence, improving the branding, etc. And so the first 2 years are what they call, deficiencies, dealing with deficiencies. Then in 2017, implementing service standards where it's more even, that there be at least 30-minute service on all routes at all times except Sunday evenings where it would be 60 minutes. So that would be a big improvement. So that would start in 2017. And then, and they call that standards and growth. And so starting in 2017, we can, having dealt with deficiencies, start focusing on growing the transit system. And then they think, according to their paper, the written words here, that will mean that as of 2018, we'll start changing what's called the modal split. And I kind of wish that the report was more clear on this modal split. What does that mean to anyone, right? And what that means is that we have our transit rides per capita, they won't be going down, they'll be going up, and we will be reducing the number of auto trips in our city, which costs our city a lot of money in road repairs, etc. So only if we do all those things will we start seeing converting people to saying, hey, you know what, maybe I'll take HSR instead of driving on this trip.
So fare increases. Personally, I found it interesting, and I think this is the first time I've ever seen it. It may have been done before, but a breakdown of how people are paying to use the HSR. The utilization. So that's in the top line. It says how many percent. So it said 11% is cash fare, 31% is adult tickets, which I thought was very interesting, and it explains why previous HSR policy had been to try to eliminate the ticket discount and force everybody to either cash or monthly pass.
Well, I'm not sure if that adult ticket is inclusive of Presto.
It's probably
It includes Presto.
Price.
But Presto, that would be monthly pass for Presto when they hit that.
Presto is $2.
Yeah, if they're using Presto.
Yeah.
But if they buy it as a monthly pass, there's still a month. So I thought that was just an interesting note when we had that discussion. I think that that's a really fascinating part of the report, and it shows a depth of this report that we have received from staff and the HSR in quite a while. So the proposal is to increase the fare by 45 cents cash this fall.
No, 25 cents this fall, and then 10 cents.
It goes from $2.55 to $3.
No.
Yeah, right here, I've got it.
But the 25 cent, we gotta check this. We gotta make sure we got the
Right
right
there.
information. But maybe they mean 25 cents on average then.
It's 25 cents for the ticket increase.
Okay.
It's 45 cents for cash.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so again, the report just came out today, so came out probably about,
few hours ago.
yeah, about 2 p.m. So the proposal is to increase the cash fare from $2.55 to $3 in September, and then keep the cash fare at $3 next September, then go to $3.25 in September 2017. The increase on the ticket fare will be 25 cents this September, and the increase on the monthly pass will be $12 this September for adults. On the side of student tickets, it's 5-cent increase. Students pay the same cash fare as adults, and the pass increase is $3.80. Your thoughts on the fare increase, and I'll let Sarah start because she's very ready for this.
Some of you follow me on Twitter. I was a little bit in shock today and tweeted quite a bit about how I was quite shocked at the fare policy. Considering that the city in there, they have principles about fares, and they say customers and taxpayers, residential and non-residential, benefit from transit, which I certainly hope councillors agree with. But with that principle, so basically, regardless of like the number of the increase of the fare, in general, what staff are asking for to do this service increase is $6 million. And they are suggesting that 5.7%, not 5.7%, 5.7 million come from fares, from riders and 5% come from taxpayers. So I've done the calculations. So that means that, so it's $300,000 they're asking from taxpayers and $5.7 million from riders. $300,000 from 500,000 people. And so basically, it works out to the $300,000 would cost taxpayers about $1 a year. So they're going to pay $1 a year. All of us, we're taxpayers too, obviously, but everyone else, the whole city is going to pay $1 a year for these transit enhancements. And monthly pass providers, people who have monthly pass, are going to pay $12 extra a month, so $140 a year in user fees, whereas taxpayers are going to pay $1 a year extra this year. So the inequity there is obvious, and we've never seen this kind of proposal where they've suggested that it be so. Last year they proposed something, and council hasn't had a fare increase for a long time because there's been a lot of activism around it, and people have pushed back. So we'll see what happens this year. But last year, staff at one point proposed half and half, but they've never proposed 95% going to riders. And they specifically say, yes, it's true that fare increases decrease ridership, but then they say because we're doing all this, the service increases ridership more. So in the end, it's okay. But we have to remember who's not going to be riding the bus anymore, right? That's important. It's not just like, oh, too bad they won't be riding the bus, but these other people will be riding the bus, that's good. This is a 13% increase in 1 year on the monthly pass. And yeah, there's more I could say, but I do want to say something about parking, but maybe I'll let the others go.
Well, actually, I do the parking thing because I think I want to follow up a little bit of what you're saying before, because I think there's some. So
I did this at the last year when there was a potential fare increase. I did a blog post on the SPRC's website and quoted from the Rapid Ready plan that said, downtown Hamilton has a significant supply of low-cost parking which limits the potential of this area to attract people to transit. And then they say a bit more, and they say, as a general target, the cost of parking in the downtown core should not be less than the price of a monthly bus pass. So that, when I did the analysis last year, it was $61 was the average downtown parking price for a Hamilton monthly lot, and a bus pass was $87. There might have been, I haven't checked, but there might have been a cost of, there might have been a 2% increase in that price since then, but there hasn't been any kind of desire from council to increase parking to be more fair. And if they increase it by $12, the difference between the two is going to go to $38 a year. A month difference between a bus pass and parking downtown.
Well, that's actually, it's interesting you mentioned the parking because council received a report. Apparently there's a downtown parking crisis. It's a crisis. So there's actually a proposal to demolish some more houses in Beasley that is being fast-tracked. It's actually ironic because today I tweeted. So I did not know this. This actually shocked me. The zoning on Barton Street has a right to demolish commercial buildings and turn them into parking lots. Has a right.
I believe that's everywhere in the city except downtown, like the very downtown.
So, and it's funny because I was at Committee of Adjustment, and last week when we're talking about parking, a new restaurant wanted to open on Ottawa Street where a restaurant had previously existed, but because there was a change in ownership and the type of food served was a change, the person had to pay $1,500 to waive a parking requirement across the street from a parking lot. So the city, as I tweeted, the city rolls out the red tape for small business and the red carpet for demolishing and putting in parking lots. And that's a huge issue. But in this report about the downtown parking crisis, how many of you are familiar with the large municipal lot at Bay King? So there was concern by staff that that's a private land the city leases. And there was concern from staff that if the city did not increase the amount of money they're paying for the land, that the owner of the land would develop it into condos.
Or
and
casinos.
Well, it was actually, yeah, it could have been a casino.
Not could have, that was the plan.
But officially, the staff report said concerned that it was going to be developed and would decrease parking. That parking lot is the cheapest one in downtown. So and it's sort of weird because this was an emergency report, like it was, and another irony in that. So the owner of that land is giving 2 parking spots in the underground convention center parking from the city.
And the parking, it really is, they're not going to raise enough money. Like, it's not like it's going to make it so we can have less of a fare increase by increasing the fare, the downtown. There's not enough parking spots to make it a big difference. So it's really about the individual decisions that get made and increasing that modal split so that when people make those decisions, they say, okay, just obviously the costs. And lastly, if we did do 50-50, I calculated this. So if we did 50-50 on fares and on taxpayers for the service increase, it would mean taxpayers would pay $50 a year, and that would be about $4 a month. And the bus pass would increase by about $6 a month.
That's, okay, so now the argument could be made, the city's books are really bad. I can't even calculate out what it is because the way they're doing the accounting on the budget book this year is that they're holding back certain key figures. So I've tried to guesstimate it, and I'm not going to throw the number out because it's just that the reserves are drained, the future fund's drained. This is how they've been preventing tax increases the last 4 years. Are you okay with this in light of the fact that it probably would not be approved if it was a 50-50 split? Okay, so I'll let you guys talk on the fare increase and I'll let Sarah skip the question.
Okay, one of the thing with the fare increase is that it hits everybody. Everybody here knows what darts is, right? There's nobody here who isn't familiar with darts. Well, there's fare equity is that the fare you pay on darts has to be exactly the same fare as is paid on HSR. Fare is paid the same way with a monthly pass, with a ticket, or cash. They don't take Presto on darts right now, but you have to pay the same. So this fare increase hurts those of us in society who live below the poverty line, those of us that are hard up, more than anybody, people who are homeless, people on OW, people on ODSP. If you work and you're on ODSP, you can get a bus pass for, I think it's half price, or it's cheaper. But if you're unable to work, you still have doctor's appointments, you still have places you have to be, you still have quality of life, you still have to travel. That kind of a fare increase for those people that can barely afford food, that can barely afford to pay their rent, to pay their bills, still need to be able to get around the city. They don't have the option of having a car, they don't have the option of taking a taxi. They have to use public transit. And when public transit goes up that much, that people are forced to stay in their homes, if you have people that don't have the ability to get there under their own power, to walk or to wheel or to use a mobility device, you're really, really decreasing the quality of life for some seniors as well. You're really decreasing the quality of life for the most vulnerable people in society, and I think that's something that really has to be worked out. There is talk of, instead of the voluntary pay the way it is now for those of us with mobility devices, we have the option of paying a fare. I think it's really unfair because it's not fair to look at people who have one disability and give them a break over people that don't. There's no reason why somebody with a mobility device gets to ride transit for free where somebody with a cognitive disability or a hearing disability does not. I know one thing that has been talked about is looking at, for those of us on ODSP, like myself, or people on OW, having fares a fare structure that is geared to income. And I think that would be a little bit more fair, and that's something that definitely needs to be looked after. But we've got to realize that for a lot of people, the fare increase is maybe a little inconvenient or maybe, a little annoying, but for a lot of people, it really, really limits their quality of life.
Jason, I'm sure you have some strong opinions, maybe even stronger than the first two.
Well, no, I'm really torn. As someone who rides the bus to and from work every day, I don't want to pay more for the bus. But as someone who wants more transit and better transit, I don't mind paying a little bit more to ride the bus. With the report the way it is, it's kind of shocking the 95 to 5% split between levy and transit riders. But my thinking is, I don't know how willing council would be to go forward with improvements if non-transit users had to pay more. Council's really shown in the past that those who don't ride the bus and they drive for a living, whether they can't take the bus, want to take the bus, whatever, they almost seem to resent having to pay for transit at all. And having council try to get other residents to swallow that they're paying more for transit now would be a tough sell. So I'm not sure how willing council would be to try to sell to their constituents who don't ride transit that they need to pay more for transit. I think they should. I pay for transit through fares, and I pay for transit through taxes. And I would love to see transit expand to all corners of Hamilton, be it Waterdown, Dundas, Stony Creek, Binbrook, who's losing transit time next week. I would love to see the city as a whole chip in and help pay for transit to expand transit for everyone. Do I want a fare increase? No. Will I stomach a fare increase if it needs improving transit? Yeah.
So I'd just like to echo what Jason said a little bit. I was reading this and I didn't have time to read through the whole document before I got here. And I was telling Sarah, well, it doesn't look so bad. They say right here there should be a fair share. Customers through fares and taxpayers through levy contributions must jointly share the cost of providing transit. And I think that's a very good principle because everyone benefits. And right now, overall, the total cost of the HSR is shared roughly equally between all taxpayers and the users. So then I was surprised when Sarah pointed out, well, look at the very end, 95% of the increased revenue is coming from fares and only 5% from general taxpayers. So I think there's a problem with that. Maybe there's some political reasons why they wanted to get that through. And I agree with Jason that we want a better HSR. The HSR has been starved of resources for about 25 years. We have to start putting money in. And I think fares have to be part of that solution. I agree with Terry that we have to be careful about those people who are on small incomes, that this increase is a lot. But I think that has to be dealt with in a different way. You can't use the basic fare for everyone and set that at the level that an unemployed person can easily afford. Otherwise, the system will be starved for resources. In other places, the unemployed ride free, and I think they should look at more creative ways of adjusting fares according to the needs of different people. One thing, and this is maybe a bit controversial, the senior fare in Hamilton is extremely low. The senior can ride a bus for $20.50 for a monthly pass.
And it's free over 80.
And it's free over 80. And the report, I think, points out that that is anomalously low. A fact is that in 30, 40 years ago, seniors were amongst the poorest people in our society. That's no longer true. In fact, on average, seniors are wealthier than young people with families. So I think that requires a little bit of adjustment. So I think we have to look at a fare increase, provided it improves service. And I think we should look at them actually following their own fair share policy and splitting it more equally between taxpayers and users.
I'd like to change up the format a little bit. So traditionally in panel you have the moderator ask a bunch of questions, and then at the end the audience can throw scrap questions out that, you know, it doesn't, I think, work very well because you guys know a lot more about transit in many cases than I do, especially in your own neighborhoods. I'm very fortunate that my commute to work now involves walking 2 blocks to my office in the morning and then walking about 7 blocks from my office to City Hall. I avoid the HSR like the plague, and actually, in fact, when I want to go and have a night out, I grab the GO bus to Square One or the GO bus to Toronto because it's more reliable than taking the HSR to Meadowlands. So, somebody in the audience have a question? All right, we'll start with Don McLean.
It's not just a question, it's a comment. The split in terms of payment needs to be looked at in another way. What we have is a council which has consistently refused for 25 years to spend new money, levy money, new taxes on transit. They've done that consistently for a quarter century. So what we have here is staff coming on their hands and knees to lick the boots of council by saying, look, your taxpayers aren't going to have to pay for this. We're going to force the poorest people in this community to pay for it. And that says to me that whatever comes through this budget, and I could see that council might approve that, next year, whatever is being predicted in this plan won't happen. We will be back in the same situation we've been in for the last quarter century of wonderful plans that don't get implemented because council refuses to put any money into it. And if you're not going to make council pay for it this year, then forget it. It's not a plan that has any legs.
Thanks, John.
I'd just like to say, I'm holding a beer, so I'll try not to slur.
Yes, a reminder that the bar is open. Feel free to go over and have a drink.
I'd just like to say that if you transfer the cost of transit from the taxpayer to the ridership, you are in fact starving transit of funds. The ridership cannot carry the cost of operating transit in the city of Hamilton, and especially not improved transit in the city of Hamilton. When I looked at the report, and I saw the same thing Sarah did, which is that yes, if you increase the cost of the fare, then transit ridership drops, but if you increase service, then ridership increases an equal amount. But the cost is all loaded up front, and the service improvements are all loaded on the back end. So the thing is that it's going to cost people ridership. It's going to cost us ridership when you increase the fares. And I agree with our moderator here that I avoid HSR too. I'm on the route, I can take it to work, but I choose not to. In fact, many, many times I've chosen to walk the 8 kilometers home rather than get on a bus. So I guess my point is, and it's not really a question obviously, but that the only way you're going to improve transit is if the taxpayer pays for it. And what you're trying to do is, Dawn is absolutely correct, is get council off the hook for it. And which is a complete cop-out. Sorry.
Maybe I can just add, yeah, that this plan is to increase HSR service by 50% over 10 years, which is something we'd all agree with. But you're right that so that's over a long period, but the fare increase is front-end loaded. So 25 cents now, then 10 cents and 10 cents, and then it'll probably be around 5 cents after that. And so again, that shows the inequity of, well, we don't even know if those other increases that will eventually have to be paid by the taxpayer because there wouldn't be enough from fares if they'll ever come. And so, yeah, exactly, we're kind of being promised something that we have no guarantee of happening.
So I'm going to ask one question to the panel. I'm going to avoid the area rating question because I'm pretty sure that we're all in agreement that that needs to be eliminated. It drives me insane that Redeemer College cannot get the Upper Paradise bus to go an extra kilometer because it crosses the line in Lancaster. So I think we're all in agreement that the area rating thing needs to be changed. Anybody need to be convinced of that? Okay, so skip that question. Is the HSR a social service? Because it's treated as a social service at council.
Yeah, sort of related to that question is one of the big argument that staff make is that, well, we have the lowest fares around, which is true. We do have, if you drive a fare, we haven't increased it in a long time, so we have one of the lowest fares, certainly in the GTA. But the blog post I did last year, I said, okay, but it's not just the fares that matter, it's income. If you compare fares to income, we actually are higher than most of our neighbors. So Mississauga was a bit higher than us, but we were tied with Brampton but London is much lower in terms of fares as a percentage of income. York and Ottawa are lower. And so along with, and then the reality is though, councillors will make the same argument about property taxes. Well, that's why we can't increase property taxes, because we have lower incomes than our neighbors. But the difference is that even though property taxes are not a perfect tax vehicle, they're not perfectly progressive, they are certainly more progressive as a tax vehicle than user fees on fares. There's no relationship to income and fares, whereas someone who owns a larger house, a more expensive house, pays more taxes, and so there's a much more progressive element to property taxes, and that's why, you know, ideally we'd have more income taxes available to municipalities, but certainly better on the property tax than fares.
Sarah, you are brilliant at this. I'm quite happy to sit here and let you talk the whole time. So. But I'm not so sure whether Terry would go for that, because Terry is, I brought her on as the firebrand, but so far you've done that role. Terry? Is it a social service?
Yes and no. I think it depends on who's using it and how they're using it and why they're using it. So I think that in some cases, no.
Or let me rephrase that. Should it be a social service? Should it be treated as a social service, as it currently is?
Again, that's really hard to say, but again, because you've got you've got different groups of people using it, different reasons for its use, and different ways it's used. I think in a sense, it is a social service. It is providing something that is extremely important to people as far as quality of life goes. You have to be able to get from point A to point B. You have to get to medical appointments. You have to get to work. You have to get to school. You have to get to day programs. You have no choice. You cannot sit around your house all day. Not everybody can afford taxis. Not everybody can afford to or has the ability to drive a car. There are lots of people, I know like myself, who just do not have the capability of driving a car because of a certain disability or, you know, for many reasons. So it is something that is absolutely necessary for a lot of people. So I think in that sense, people using it who have no choice, who have to get to point A to point B, to even, like if you're looking at medical appointments, to maintain their health, to live, to survive, it's, you know, it's something that's absolutely mandatory. If you're on dialysis, you have no choice. You either go to your dialysis apartment, you rely on transit to get there, or you no longer live. So, I mean, for some people, it's an absolutely vital service. It has to be there and it has to be used.
I think it is. I bus everywhere. I bus from work, I bus grocery shopping, I bus to bring my kids places. Bus is essential to my everyday life. I'm not sure if you remember the last transit strike, but when the bus is shut down, it's chaos. Going to get anywhere, you're either forking out money for a cab to get where you gotta go, or you're not going there. And I live in Lower Hamilton, in the Barton area. I live in Stony Creek. That's a long walk to work if I can't bus. I opted to not get my lessons at all, because I figured I live in Hamilton, I can get anywhere I need to go on the bus. So if there was no transit, I would be a lot healthier, a lot more walking anyway. It'd be a couple hours to walk to work. So yeah, I think transit is essential. If we didn't have transit, a lot of people would be stuck with that one.
So I think what we've heard is that transit's very important, and in fact it's essential for a lot of people. But I think it's wrong to think of transit as a social service. That's the wrong way of thinking about it. It's essential civic infrastructure. It's essential transportation infrastructure. All the things we've heard are equally true of our roads, or our bridges, or our traffic lights. If we didn't maintain the roads, if we didn't clear the roads.
All right, we'll take advantage of this. I just want to say, in the back there, we acknowledge the councillor. I'd like to acknowledge Jason
Julia,
Thorne.
I wasn't finished. Finished.
Sorry, okay.
I got interrupted by my phone and then I got interrupted by you, but it's easier to tell you to be quiet.
Are you so sure about that?
So what I'm saying is that there's no reason to treat transit as any different from providing water, from clearing roads, from electricity. It's essential, and we need to provide it. And I think, as this document makes clear, everyone in society benefits from it, not just those who take it on a regular basis.
So I want to thank Jason Thorne, the General Manager, Economic Development and Planning. He was a city staffer here. Jason comes to all kinds of stuff. See him many times in the community. If you haven't met him yet, approach him afterwards. He's very approachable. And he bicycles a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if he was on a bike coming here tonight. So, Jason, thank you for coming. It's really appreciated. So, leading from that question, one of the things that struck me, so I went to University of Manitoba for school. And in Manitoba, I was heavily involved in some stuff in the community, Boys and Girls Clubs there. And every Wednesday I would go downtown for a lunch, Kiwanis lunch from campus. And the distance from downtown to the university is the equivalent of East Haven from here. And at the end of that lunch, I would go to a cafe. They had a transit way, so forget bus lane. They actually shut down an entire street, one block off of the main run, and it was bus only. I'd go to a cafe in the corporate headquarters of Great West Life, sit and have a coffee. This is 2004. There was a screen that would tell me when the bus was arriving, and I got on what was the Super Express to the rich area of the city. So it had corporate executives on it. And this bus would go to the equivalent of Ancaster, but before it split off to go to that neighborhood, it would stop on the main road, so I get off there and then connect. How do we, in Hamilton, change the demographics of who is riding our transit system? Because right now, it doesn't feel like people are choosing to ride the transit system so much as they're either forced to, or they're philosophically, like many of us in the room, they choose to as a social choice, but a car is more convenient. Who would like to start off with this one? How do we get the corporate executive types onto our transit?
I can jump in again. I think the obvious thing to do is you provide a good service. You provide a service that's comparable to driving, and in some ways better. The fact that almost no councillors were willing to take the bus for 5 return trips, even if they didn't have to do it all in 1 week, tells you something about the fact that our own council, or many of them, don't see it as a feasible alternative. And I think LRT is a very important part of this. It would dramatically boost the level of service on our busiest route. This route, the King Main, has already 42%, almost half of the total passengers. And that improves the image and improves the quality, and it also allows the rest of the system to be reconfigured. Once we've done that, I think you'd see council take transit a lot more seriously.
I think too, if you kind of build a system so it's a reliable alternative, and if when the bus is supposed to be at a certain spot, it is there. It's not 2 minutes early, it's not 2 minutes late, it gets there when it's supposed to be there. If you can make the transit system reliable, so you can get from point A to point C through connecting point B, and you know you'll make it every time, it's not a roll of dice. I might make it today, I might not make it today. I'll be on time for work today, or late for work today. If you can make it so that the schedules are built in such a way that it will arrive on time, and the transit operators are taught in a certain way that if they get to a stop early, they stop and they wait. If they're running behind, they radio and say running behind, so they can kind of coordinate the system. I know one thing that I think Burlington does with their transit is if a passenger needs a connection and the bus is running late, the operator will radio in to control to talk to the connecting bus and say, can you wait 2 minutes? I have a connection for you. And it works pretty well. If you need a connecting bus, they will wait for you. I don't know if there really is that in Hamilton where you can have the bus operator call ahead to the next bus and have them wait for you. I see many people run from bus to bus and not make that connection. Or the driver will try to honk at the connecting bus and they just keep going. Waving your arms frantically and the bus keeps going anyway. So if you can make the system reliable, so if you can get from where you gotta go and you know you're gonna make it, people who may not want to try the bus will try it because they know I can get from here to there, not have the hassle of driving there and the traffic and the parking and all this nonsense. I can just sit back, relax, and go where I gotta go, and I'll get there without any hassle. If you can do that, I think people will be more willing to ride the bus than they are today.
Terry?
I think the other thing too is that your bus routes have to make sense, and they have to cover all the areas. If you live in an area where you have to walk 5 blocks to get to a bus, you're not going to take the bus. It's got to be done in a way that you can come out of your home, you can get to a bus stop within a few blocks, within a reasonable amount of time. You don't want to be out walking to a bus stop in the pouring rain or in a blizzard. And I think something else that's really important is good bus shelters. We need to have shelters up. Nobody's going to take the bus if they have to walk 5 blocks to get to the bus stop, and then they have to stand in the pouring rain for 10 minutes or in the wind or whatever weather you have. That makes things a lot harder. So I think it's really important that you have bus stops that are located in a very sensible, logical way, so that nobody has to walk too far to get there. I was up in, I think it was up in Brampton in the fall, and I noticed some of the stops there, they actually have screens up in there that tells you what time the next bus comes. It tells you what buses come to that stop, not just numbers on a sign, but they actually have a screen that tells you which buses come to that stop, where their destination is, and what time the next one comes. I mean, not everybody has a cell phone, not everybody can get to the stop, look up, not everybody has the ability to see the numbers on a sign, to dial them into your phone and find out when the next bus is coming. So I think if people know that they don't have to go too far to get to a stop, they know that what time the bus will be getting there, it takes them where they need to go, and again, all the stops, they have shelters so that they're protected from the weather, so that it's actually a pleasant experience waiting for the bus. Hopefully they don't have to wait too long, but it's not a bad experience having to wait. And when they know when the bus is coming, they know where they're going, they can get where they need to go, and they can get off at a stop. That doesn't mean that they have to walk a ridiculous distance to get to their final destination. That they can get there efficiently and easy and within decent time. Nobody wants to spend 2 hours on a bus. And nobody wants to wait 20 minutes for a connection transfer from one bus to the other. It's just got to be a good, smooth, logical, well-timed, well-thought-out system.
The only thing I'd add is more kind of user-friendly things. All those things are important, but like, let's put the number of the bus on every single bus stop in this city. Like, that is like minimal that I can't believe we haven't done yet. Like, how is something user-friendly if you don't even know what bus is coming?
Seeing another, a lot of questions from the audience, so I get to finally shut up. So Nicholas, this is another way to shut me up, is having people ask questions. Go, John, you can just give to anyone. John Fink there will bring the mic to you.
I'm actually going to bring it to that guy because he wanted to ask something like about 20 minutes ago.
Okay, we will get to everybody.
I don't have a question.
Well, this guy sounds a little more passionate than I am. I'm pretty passionate.
Okay, this is the great thing about this
You were talking about buses stopping for interconnections in Burlington. I have seen that happen numerous times in Hamilton. The problem could be that people are not aware of it, but it is done in Hamilton. I have a question for later. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Joey, is there a bar here?
A bar? Yeah.
Make that clear, we're just wondering. There's spilling time.
Yeah, feel free to get up anytime, grab a drink. Feel free to come closer. I mean, at this point, we're really having a conversation. I mean,
I don't know if I'm going to be able to match the passion of the first few guys so far, but I'll give it a shot. Firstly, transit should be free. It may be an idiotic idea to say that, an idiotic thought to throw out there, but transit should be free for everybody. I'm young, I'm healthy, I don't have kids, I don't have a wife or anything like that. There's a lot of things that I'm paying for right now that I don't use, but I know in paying for them, my world is a hell of a lot better than if I didn't or if those things weren't offered. School, hospitals, fire service, things like that. I pay for these things, I don't use them, knock on with the fire service. But there's a lot of things I don't pay for. Transit should be free. And in terms of increasing service center, I think it's a great idea. I don't think that 95% of the benefits go towards transit users, which is what we're paying for here. I think it's a bit more of a split than that, and I guess I'm going to ask a couple questions now. Transit is not, it's not opinion based. So why are we making it opinion based? Why are we not using the numbers that we have? It's not a science. It's not necessarily a science or anything like that. But why are we not using numbers to get what we actually need? I mean, I feel like I'm spinning my tires here and all this stuff, but this isn't saying, oh, blue is better than green, the Leafs are better than the Canadians. Different debate for a different day, but it's not an opinion based. These are numbers. So what's the problem? I mean, Mr. Green.
There's one. Yeah, I was gonna say he probably has a strong opinion on blue versus green. He just went to the facility.
His colleagues. I mean.
Can I get a question though? Just because I see a lot of hands up and.
So why are we not using the numbers? Why are we using opinions? Or why are the people knowing that when a bus passes by, obviously there's not a required number of buses out there.
Yeah.
When
it's the question. The fundamental question is the money. Everyone council wants to increase transit and wants to make sure there's no bypasses. And everyone here does. Nobody's against that. It's just that we're not agreeing how to pay for it as a community. Or certainly the council is divided on that. And we have our opinions as we've stated.
Actually, just a question, it's the bypasses. So for example, the way we schedule transit to McMaster University is the bus runs every 7 minutes. But McMaster University is probably the easiest to schedule for because classes end at 20 and start at 30. So what we end up with is empty buses on the hour and bypasses during the peak times. Would it be wise to set up buses so that they're not on an interval schedule, but that it varies within that hour going to the university? As non-student riders, would that be confusing or would that be beneficial? As Pam. Yeah, well actually, yeah, you teach at Mac, so that's actually...
So I work at McMaster. I took the bus there today, I took the bus here. I think the issue with McMaster is really basically that there's not sufficient service for the demand. During the morning and afternoon peaks, it's crush capacity, there's drive-bys, there's no empty buses. So in the morning, that's not an issue. Again, LRT would solve that problem. You'd have 5-minute service, you'd have buses, you have vehicles that could carry 300 passengers. It would be very reliable. So I think the issue is on that route. We are far insufficient in the capacity, and we'd either have to put a lot more buses in, and I don't know how we could run those buses with the headway that's required without having them bunch up, and it would be very hard to provide sufficient service.
I think the answer to that question is somebody want to add something, or do we go to the audience?
Without LRT, it would be difficult.
That's right, without LRT.
Okay, so
without LRT, it would be easy.
That's right.
John, if you'd like to bring the mic to Darren there. Yeah.
Hi. I do have a question, but it relates to this gentleman's comment about numbers, and then your response regarding money. It's true in what Joey had previously said, where his experience suggested that I believe it was
Winnipeg.
In Winnipeg, the service actually went into the lack of a better word, and
it went from where people were going to where they were going.
Elite area. The service was provided to an elite area, equivalent to Ancaster, I think you referred to. And the problem in Hamilton is these services are not provided to the privileged communities. In fact, they're quite against actually having the services. So how do you suggest that we as people that are in the lower city that seem to appreciate the service convince those privileged areas, which I know that that's a terrible word to use, please don't criticize me on that, but those are the areas that have the funds, and they're withholding them specifically for transit, so you can do all the improvements that you want to do in the lower city, great for us, but we still don't have the capital to continue that process as long as those privileged areas withhold the funding. And that's what they're doing, specifically for transit. I get it, they give money to the city, but that money isn't directed specifically at transit. So how do you convince those areas if we're going to improve transit? Am I wrong?
I see Sarah
Sorry,
smile.
I might be
Go
wrong.
for it,
Like,
Sarah.
I might be wrong in my whole philosophy
No,
on that.
you're
But like Ancaster doesn't have a bus, so they're not willing to pay for it.
Yeah, but I think there's two issues there. One, you know, in terms of convincing people to ride the bus, obviously we've talked about that in terms of all the service improvements that need to happen. But I think the second question is, how do we convince more people who don't ride the bus that increasing their taxes for transit is good for them? Because that's really what we need, is that we have a community conversation about transit is good for the whole city. And we saw in the bus lane debate that there was non-agreement about that at council. There seemed to be disagreement that the bus lane helped anyone except transit users. And so we have to do a better job of reaching out to more different types of people to get them to be vocal about what are the benefits of transit. So certainly business owners, you know, all the business owners we know can, you know, when we go make a purchase, can we say, hey, you know, I got my bus, the bus system helps your business, right? And get them to be vocal, write a little email to their counselor, CC it to a few other people, and so that they understand that, okay, even people who don't ride the bus are pro-transit. It's not just, and that's what I like about the transit conversation happening now, is that we're seeing lots of different people come together, not just bus riders, but there's starting to be that realization that transit helps everyone.
Okay, next, John, just bring it to somebody and go for it. We'll try to get everyone in. We're only at 8:30, and I think 30 minutes we can probably get everyone in. And if we need to go a little bit longer, I think we can probably do that as well. So just buy another drink if we do.
Thanks. I have two comments, one of which becomes a question. One comment is about the routes at McMaster. So I also work at McMaster, and in the wintertime I take the bus there. I agree that there are issues with not enough transit going to McMaster, but I also think that HSR drivers manage their loads very, very poorly. When I get on the bus, a little bit east of downtown, I make a point of heading to the back, and the number of times I have been on a bus that has empty seats at the back, where they have passed by people, is astonishing. And there's only so much energy really here to expend.
May I ask, so
Yes.
bringing in my Winnipeg experience, in Winnipeg there's fines for not moving to the back,
Right.
and fines for not taking off your backpack on the university road. This is what we've agreed to at the student union. This was something the student union asked for.
So
Would you be okay with that type of thing?
That's a really interesting solution that I hadn't thought about. From my perspective, I see drivers who are very hands-off, who don't make any sorts of comments about not locking the rear door. This is a big issue. People stand in the rear door.
Let Terry go at this one
Okay.
first.
Stand at the rear door, and you know, it's just it's really something that's so easily managed by reminders, verbal, written, whatever. So please go ahead, Terry. I do have one more comment.
We'll let you know. Keep the mic. Okay, keep the mic. But I know Terry wants to go here.
Yes.
So
Yeah, when it comes to drivers passing people by, those of us, like I'm in a manual chair, I was down at Barton and Iowa coming out of, I really hate to say Walmart, but coming out of Walmart on a Sunday evening at 6:30. I was passed by 4 buses. I didn't get on a bus until after 9. Bus drivers will not ask people to move back.
Yeah.
They don't want to ask people to get out of the accessible seats. They don't want to do anything. And if they're a couple minutes late, they use that as an excuse for not letting a wheelchair on.
Right.
I just want to remind people too that those of us with mobility devices, there are only 2 spots on every bus. So if I were to go out with two other friends that were in chairs, we couldn't take the same bus. There are only two accessible spaces on a bus.
So in defense of the bus drivers, because I know many, they have been told by managers not to get into those conversations, not to have those conversations, and I mean, this actually gets to another problem.
They're not allowed to get into arguments. They are supposed to ask people to vacate those seats, and they are supposed to ask people to, the courtesy seats as well, they are supposed to ask people. I've had lots of bus drivers that will say, there's a senior getting on the bus, can somebody please give them a seat?
Yeah, but for some of them, they receive feedback, so the managers will say to us, yeah, we tell them that they're to do that, but we'll say another thing, we have a new transit director, which has been a significant change. And I actually heard from drivers that it's the first time they've ever seen an office manager, somebody that's in the office on the buses. He's actually riding the buses, which is another issue altogether. So, but you make a very good point about the fact that, yeah, for wheelchair riders, and it's also schedule adherence. I don't know how many of you know, the Beeline bus is given 21 minutes to go from downtown to Eastgate during the day. The King bus is given 23 minutes to do the same thing. So but it does not excuse that at all.
No, and I mean, I've been passed by many times when I've looked in and I've seen their receipts, and I had one driver, I grabbed that Sunday, I grabbed the front doors and said, I'm not moving until you put me on this bus. I can see empty seats. They just don't want to get up and walk to the back and use the ramp. But I think one of the problems, like you say, about people not taking off their backpacks, a huge problem is, one, strollers. People with strollers that are 12 times bigger than the child in them. They carry every one of their worldly possessions on that stroller. And I mean, they're taking up spaces. They take up a great deal of space. What's wrong with folding up a stroller if you have the fold-up ones and taking the child out? People with bundle buggies. I know that you've got to go grocery shopping and get your stuff back, but sometimes people just overdo it a little. And yeah, people with backpacks. You know how many times I've been hit in the face with a backpack because somebody's standing up, isn't paying attention to where they are, and they turn around to talk to somebody. I think HSR really needs to think about how they're going to deal with strollers, how they deal with bundle buggies, what their policies are of asking people to move out of seats and let people that need seats sit down, and getting people to move to the back of the bus and whatnot.
But I think a lot of that could be addressed by their strategy, which is basically that they would have a strategy, if it's funded, that would say maximum capacity in terms of what they're going to consider maximum capacity. If every seat is taken, that bus is at maximum capacity and they need to add more buses. That's what they're saying. They want to develop the service standard so that it doesn't have to wait till the bus is crammed like sardines before they put a new bus on there. So I think instead of kind of blaming other users, I think we really have to put the pressure on the city to say, okay, everyone sitting down, that is a full bus. We don't have to have people standing up to consider it full.
Yeah, but I think the problem is that people won't move back. And a lot of time, drivers will say, well, look, there's people standing. Well, some people stand because they want to stand. They want to stand in a group and talk. There are still empty seats at the back of the bus. And the drivers need to either tell people to move back or ask people to sit down, or don't use the excuse that, hey, look, there are people standing. There's no room on the bus. Yeah, there is.
So I suppose my point there was that there's different ways that the current crowds on the bus can be managed. And so I'd be really interested to hear what the HSR proposes to do in terms of staff training, messaging that can facilitate some of this. So my second point is something that Sarah and Nicholas both touched on, which is the social service question. And I wonder if it might be helpful to reframe the issue, rather than talking about transit as a social service, which can have this negative baggage, talking about it as a social good. And what are the goods, the benefits that accrue to everyone, not just the users, not just people who are on the bus, but people who need to drive and there are fewer cars on the road, people who are getting customers to their business, etc. So I'm curious about your thoughts about this reframing from service to good, if you think that's something that would be useful, and how that, if it is useful, how we can inject that into our discourse.
Okay, I think this is a great opportunity for the discussion about the rebranding. So there's talk of rebranding. How many people are familiar with the word art at the back of the bus?
Oh, the word art.
Word art. That's the things where they used every font in.
Yeah.
So I think it's the last job Clippy did before he went into retirement. But how do we rebrand the HSR? Do we need to rebrand the HSR? Well, I think we need to. But what do we do? And do we change the name even? So Mississauga changed the name when they did rebranding. Nicholas?
So I think this is something that I think is important. I'm a bit surprised at how much money they want to put into the rebranding, but there's very simple things that they can do. And I remember I was interviewed when IBI did their operational review in 2010. And one thing I've noticed, other people have noticed, is on the outside of the bus, you've got shiny, happy people buying nice products and doing nice things. You step into the bus and what do you have? You've got drug abuse, problem gambling, alcoholism, child abuse. It's really a downer. But I'm sitting there, and instead of having, I think, oh well, I don't want to look at yet another ad about children drowning in their own.
But didn't you know that's great? Didn't you read the staff report last year that we weren't meeting advertising sale targets? But because we weren't meeting advertising sale targets, the advertising company that we're paying is giving us free ad space.
Right. So and then the other side of that is then when you say, well, I don't want to look at the way smoking gives you lung cancer. I'll look out the window, and they block the window. The windows are this horrible word art, or they plastered their ad across the window, and you can't see out. So it shows a disregard for the customer. The customers are not treated as valuable clients. They're treated as, oh, well, we'll hide them inside this bus, and the bus can
Terry wants to go to Jason.
No, I was going to say too, with those ads on the buses, for people that have low vision issues, you put those ads on the bus and we cannot see out. For people like me with mobility devices, we're already facing the back of the bus and we can't see where we're going. The minute you block out the windows, we have no idea where we are. For people who may be unsure, who don't use the bus regularly and need landmarks, they can't see where they are. And I mean, those stop announcements, yeah, they help a bit if you know the name of the street that you're getting off at. If you go with a visual landmark, you're out of luck. It's really, really hard if you have a cognitive disability. If you're new to the city, you don't know where you're going. That just makes life really, really difficult for people. And I know people that have actually had to stop using the bus because of those ads.
Jason?
I think rebranding could be a positive thing. I'm attached to the name. It's been around for 130 years now. I think rebranding is kind of like the second step. You want to first fix the service, get things running smoothly, make it a good service again. And once you have it as a good service, then you relaunch and your new branding, your new name. Get people that come in. Get them to come in when it's good. Don't kind of rebrand now, and then so it's a new name, new colors, new everything, same service. Make the service look nice, make it appealing, and then flashing paint job and flashing logo and new catchphrase and all that fun stuff.
And if the service is good, it doesn't matter what it's called.
That's right. There you go.
Yeah, that's a good point. Matthew Green.
I did end up with the microphone. I do apologize for those of you that have been waiting. But just a couple of thoughts. I really appreciate, Joey, you putting this forum on. And I appreciate Mills Hardware for hosting us tonight. Certainly going into tomorrow's budget, it's important for me to be able to take perspective to that table. And I appreciate Jason Thorne for coming out and also hearing from the staff perspective. There's so much that you guys are unpacking right now. And you know, you talk about branding in particular, the experience and the service is the brand. And so you're so right in terms of what we call it matters not. It's how we're interacting with the experience. And so from a service perspective, that has to be the first look. I'm not clear when the last time there's been like a comprehensive user survey, satisfaction survey, third party, kind of facilitated throughout the city. And I'm excited to see the work that Lindsay and folks are doing around the Transit Riders Association. I still will say that aspect is what's been missing in the conversations that I've heard. You hear about ratepayers and taxpayers and homeowners and car drivers as being synonymous. False dichotomy, everybody pays taxes. So it's important, I think for City Hall and the broader community to see groups like this organizing and being a part of and supporting the 20, 30 years that Don's been doing down there at City Hall and really coming out and being a part of the conversation, because we can collectively create political will to change the funding models that will essentially change this whole entire structure. So you think about things like out in Ancaster, you can look at it from a bunch of different perspectives. You look at the blast zones in rapid transit and where they go, they're all plugging into employment lands, and Chamber of Commerce knows it, big business knows it. They need labor to get to these jobs. So when you have somebody stuck on a bus, or worse, missing a bus, not only is that missed time and wasted time for the rider, but it's also missed labor and wasted labor for the employer. So there's huge economic uplift arguments for this. I think when we're talking to people who might not ride it, but people who might be inclined to be more aligned on the economic uplift, that's definitely a huge sell. I know that's the big sell for LRT. But I got to tell you, I received this at the same time you did. So today at 12:30, knowing that they're going to put forward this 10-year strategy, knowing that we just came off of this really contentious bus lane conversation, I received this at the same time that you did. So it's a challenge for me, and I'm fortunate that I have great staff at Simon where we can kind of peel through this stuff together. But it's important that we all share this information and we understand it, because this is what I do know. Despite how smart and how experienced those members of council are with their collective years of service to council, I am confident that if we crowdsource the points and the facts with people like the panelists present and even just the everyday riders, if we all comb through this thing together, this budget, and pick it apart, then we can match any other councillor's arguments against transit. We can create compelling reasons for it, we can message it, we can simplify it, and we can share it to be able to sell this thing, because the decisions that are to be made, I'm a firm believer in this term of council, will have an impact for the next 25 years. If transit wasn't an election issue, and I don't personally haven't been on, I don't think it wasn't for me in my ward, people aren't even aware of it. There's people who take the number 2 BART bus every day, they don't know what LRT is. That's a problem. So we got to figure out a better way to communicate that and sell that and the benefits of that as well. But we're going to have to fill each and every one of these seats. If we have to do it every month, if we have to do it for the remainder of the year, stay on this process. So important. So I just wanted to give you those thoughts, and I appreciate that I had the chance to come in and listen. And feel free to email me any really good questions for tomorrow. I will ask the good ones. And also remember to sign in with Lindsay for the transit rights.
Yeah.
So if I may, on February 24th, you has a right. It's the one time a year that it's right in provincial legislation, have the right to speak to council on any budget issue from 3 to 7 p.m. You don't have to register in advance. You literally can show up at City Hall, and council has to be available for that 4-hour period on any budget-related issue. And when I say any budget-related issue, everything's a budget issue. We've really Chris Murray has fixed the problem we had with clerks before. So 3 years ago, clerks were refusing to allow me to even request a delegation on open data to council, saying I had spoke to it already. So I said, well, it's a budget issue. And so I just opened my thing with, so I want to talk about open data, and I want to suggest that we should spend some money on it. And then I got to do my full presentation. So please, take advantage of that. I've been at City Council for a couple of years now. Most of the time, that 3 to 7 period, there's 5 people at the beginning, and then nobody shows up, that's when you engage, that's when you have the chance to talk.
And to be more specific on that, there's a meeting being organized by this new group called Hamilton for Transit, with a 4, the number 4. And they're having a meeting, I believe, on Thursday, February 19th, in advance of the 24th. Is it 24th?
Yeah. It's a Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday. So Thursday before, they're having a meeting at 7, location TBA. And that will be an opportunity for people to kind of organize, to say, okay, you know, organize arguments, etc. And yeah, certainly as many people as possible that can make delegations. It's just 5 minutes. You can speak for less if you want, and really just tell your story. It's super important to show up to council and make them understand these issues.
And as I was saying, you can show up at 6 p.m. So you can say, I want to speak, and you'll get the response back. The meeting starts at 3 p.m. You should be there for 3 p.m. As a right, if you show up at 6 o'clock and there's not already people lined up, and there never has been, council has to remain till 7 p.m. So it's the only time in the entire year where you're allowed to speak to council after business hours. Every other time it's 9:30 or 1:30, and there's no predictability. This is one time a year people have, really I'm asking you to take advantage of it, because I'm stuck sitting there till 7 as well, so.
And Lindsay, maybe put up your hand so people can sign up with Hamilton for Transit through her, or you can email hamiltonfortransit@gmail.com to sign up and find more out.
Yes, and actually, good question. City staff are present, all the general managers are present, and often the directors are present as well, because it is an opportunity. So the rule is that you ask questions of council. So my experience has always been that I get up there and I say, I hope the council will take this opportunity to ask staff the following question. And you will always find a councillor that is willing to ask that question of staff, unless your question is, hey staff, why are you evil people with devil words? Then they don't. I'm going to make it a bit more of a lightning round, because there's so many people who want to talk. So I may cut you off after 30 seconds to a minute, not because I'm a mean person, which I am, but because we want to keep the time short.
One of the first thing that you mentioned, Matthew, was about doing a survey. A survey was just done with darts. Last year they did a huge survey. They mailed out to, can't remember how many clients, a huge portion of the clients. Fairly detailed survey, and I think it would be a really great idea for HSR to do the same.
So, go ahead, sir. Thank you.
I'll try to do it in 30 seconds. I've got a comment and 2 quick questions. The first question is an easy, well, I think it's an easy one. What has the new report done to advance us beyond rapid ready, if it is anything? Because you guys have seen the report, most of us have not. But can I just put everything on the table and then you can respond as you wish?
Yeah, Sarah, please, and definitely feel free to take a second quick question.
I think it's building on it. I don't think there's anything vastly new in here that wasn't in Rapid Ready, but it gives the more specifics of what. It doesn't exactly say what routes. It says a few things about certain routes increasing frequency, but it's not. There's not a huge shift from Rapid Ready, which was a great report.
The 10-year dollar ask is the same, but it starts 3 years later.
So my general comment is, I think that the reason we don't see any progress in transit in Hamilton is the same reason we don't see any progress in environmental policy at the federal level. The government just doesn't believe it is necessary. And I think that what's going on is that the suburban councillors do not see, and their constituents do not believe, that transit is worthwhile. So the key thing to do is to convince them that their taxes are going to go down, for Christ's sake, if they support transit.
Well, I'm going to interject myself here. I'm going to say is that I hear a lot of complaints from a certain councillor who I'm really good friends with about the fact that traffic on the 403 is slow down into Hamilton. And I really feel that there's a huge opportunity for a super express bus out of Ancaster every morning for those people who are office workers. And I really strongly believe that if we did that and it was convenient, we would do it. And I say this because when I worked for Maclean's magazine, the paperwork for me to take public transit was more than them to rent me a car. And that's just the reality of a large corporation of that nature. And so one day I was required to take a car instead of taking public transit, and the thought was simple. My manager said, well, it takes you 2.5 hours to go from Hamilton to Kitchener on the bus to get to University of Waterloo. We want you to drive so it's quicker, less time. And then they called me and they said, hey Joey, you haven't put up any articles today for me to edit. And I explained that when I'm on the bus, I'm working. So I think that, I just wanted to throw that out there. Did somebody want to add to about making it so that people in the suburbs?
I guess my quick question to the panel is, what do you see as the strongest argument for those mountain councillors to convince them that they really want transit? Because I think that's what has to be done.
Jason, you look like you're thinking on this one.
I think a lot of things you said are really good points about like the employment areas and getting constituents to and from jobs. I mean, if you have an employee in Ancaster, there's also one up in Upper Stony Creek as well, employment lands. If you have bus service that goes there, you can get a lot of employees to and from those areas. A lot of people who work in some of those areas may not live in those areas. And being able to get those workers to the area is a great thing. The Maple Leaf plant in Upper Stony Creek, they actually have a shuttle that runs to and from the plant to get people there. Whereas you could have just like extension of the Verala bus, half a kilometer further, and it's just part of regular service. I think if you could show some of the councils that having more transit in those areas gives more people access to those jobs, more access to get to where they need to go, that they don't have to rely on driving to and from point A to point B. If you can get there easily by transit, you don't need to take a car. As you said, with the 403 being congested. One of the suggestions in, I believe, the 2010 report was they called the Crosstown Flyer, express bus that hit all different points. So we go, you have Lymer's Mall, Ancaster, downtown, McMaster, Eastgate, and we're going to express between all those points. If you want to go from Upper Stony Creek to downtown, instead of hitting 3 local bus routes, you have one express bus that will take you the loop way around. Basically one stop. You go from literally Lymer's Mall, we take the lake across to Ancaster, and then down the Wilson Streets to McMaster, express, no stops. So instead of taking that bus is going to hit you every stop, you can take one bus and get you from point A to point B. And again, the point of going to Ancaster, instead of taking the 16 Ancaster when it runs into Meadowlands to catch the 5A down to downtown to transit to the Beeline Express to go to Eastgate, it'd be one express bus from Ancaster all the way to Eastgate. One bus, one stop, one fare, point A to point B, easily. I think that would be a great thing.
So we do have till 10 o'clock on the venue. So what I'm suggesting, and I want a show of hands, is that we take one more question now, and then we take a 5 to 10 minute break to give people a chance to mingle, chat, our panelists an opportunity to grab a quick break, and then we come back at it. Is everybody thinking that that's a good idea?
Yes.
Okay, so one question now, then we'll take a break, then we'll continue.
Thank you. A remark was made about being asked for what to improve it and increase the ridership. A comparison with Burlington. Again, look at a Burlington bus. There are comfortable seats throughout the bus. Look at the Hamilton buses. There are about 8 comfortable seat places. Change the layout. Of course, that also means we need more buses to handle the people. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take one question, though. I do want to take a question. Yes? And thank you for coming. I know that you're at everything, so I'm glad you...
I'm not really everything. That would be more of a Tim Button type of thing. But, yeah, Matthew Green is my new counselor. I have to confess, I worked for Tim Simmons as a volunteer, but I guess Matthew will do okay. I like that word unpacking things, though, by the way. Back in my day, we used to call it deconstruct or parse. But you know, times change. I missed the first part of this, but I did want to say I think the buses are very poorly designed physically for the traffic they're intended to bear. I'm very concerned also about people crowding into the, as we mentioned, the back, particularly the rear exit. I think that is really a health and safety issue, and probably that's the way you should approach it. I think we should keep in mind that maybe some of those people have anxiety issues and they need to be near an exit as well. So it's a complicated issue, but it's very uncomfortable. One thing I did find out from my own research and talking to a number of drivers and calling the office was that where I had always assumed a bus driver was like the captain of a ship or an airplane that had total control within his domain, I was told they have no control. And they have no authority to make anybody do anything. They have no authority to kick anybody off. If you refuse to move out of one of those disabled seats, they have no authority to make you do it. All they can do is take the bus out of service and call for a supervisor. So there is a problem with the bus drivers not having the power to the capacity
So,
to do those.
this brings us to a question I wanted to ask the panel. Should we separate out the HSR similar to how we separate out the library and have a transit commission, which would get to something like a special constable power that exists other places? So transit commission, yes or no, and what would it look like if?
I think the constable issue is different than the transit commission issue. You could have a transit commission and not have constables. And so yeah, I think that there's certainly, there were some ward councillors who were running with that platform, and I thought it was very interesting. And certainly you could make the argument that if we don't get rid of area rating, then the transit commission should have kind of seats apportioned by how much different wards pay towards the system. Right now we have some councillors, like in Ward 14, that don't pay anything towards transit and still get a vote. None of their taxes go towards transit and they still get a vote on this, and that's patently unfair. And so to have if you don't get rid of area transit, area rating, you have to at least move towards that. And then there would be more public input available, because there would be like meetings of a commission, and so we could make deputations specifically about HSR, which you can't really, you can, but nobody, this is less of an obvious process.
Yeah, basically I just have to agree with what Sarah just said.
Thank you, Terry. Jason? And by the way, Jason, we had a great joke earlier where we were talking about how the HSR, and I was surprised to find this out, has a customer service department of 20 staff and a director of manager of customer service on the Sunshine List. And then Sarah Mayo said actually they have 21 people, the staff plus Jason, a volunteer. So.
I think it would work out at commission. One of the things that always kind of frustrated me with watching council meetings is a lot of councilors who make decisions on transit don't really understand transit. They don't take the bus, they don't know the bus, they don't really understand what they're really voting on. I've had many frustrations when I was yelling at the computer monitor when the councilor trying to grasp what staff was telling him, and it was, to me, very basic. It was like they just weren't grasping it, and at the end of the day, they still had a vote in that decision that I don't feel they actually understood what they were talking about. So whereas at a commission, you have staff and volunteers who understand the transit system, understand what's going on and what you need to have in the system, rather than having just a blind vote who, as Sarah alluded to, doesn't have a stake in the conversation, let alone needing a vote in the conversation. You have knowledgeable people who understand the system and understand the challenges and the needs, and at the table making those decisions, you would probably make the decisions a lot more structured, a lot more positive, a lot more fruitful.
So I have to confess, I'm not sure exactly what a transit commission would do compared with the current system. I think if council would still have the power to vote on the budget for HSR, that would be an issue. If council still had the power to cancel a bus lane because they didn't like it, that would still be an issue. It might help somewhat in the details, but I don't think it would really solve the basic problem.
All right, so let's, I'll grab a break here. Thank you panelists for the first part. And the bar is open. So.
There's a bar here?